Since the dawn of time, humanity has fought. They wielded spears against beasts, swords against invaders, and guns against tyranny. The blood of warriors flows through their veins relentless, unyielding. But when they stepped into the age of the stars, the universe believed they had grown weak. The universe was wrong. Listen to this tale, the story of the day humanity was annihilated, and the day they became legend. Beneath the layers of ash that once covered a planet home to over 10 billion people, deep underground, the last bastions of humanity still endured. Bunkers designed to withstand the collapse of an entire world. Hidden fortresses, buried beneath mountains, protected by cloaking fields, still sustaining life. Not much, not millions, just a few thousand. But every single one of them was unbroken. General Elias Rourke sat in a darkened room, his eyes fixed on the holographic map of Earth. No more borders, no more bustling cities. Just a dead world, a massive graveyard orbiting the sun. His fists clenched. They had fought to the bitter end, but it didn't change the truth. Humanity had lost. "Report," he ordered. A young officer, his face streaked with dust and sweat, stood at attention. "We have approximately 24,000 survivors scattered across the planet, but we've lost contact with more than half of them. Supplies? Enough for 6 months if we ration carefully. Weapons?" The officer remained silent. The answer was painfully obvious. The once powerful plasma rifles now held nothing but dead batteries. The war machine stood lifeless, drained of energy. The last warships had been torn apart in the void of space. Rourke closed his eyes. The Cthal believed they had wiped out humanity, and in a way, they had succeeded. But he knew better. They were still alive. And if they were alive, then the war was not over. Deep within a bunker in the Andes Mountains, a small group of warriors prepared for the inevitable. They couldn't stay hidden forever. They couldn't just wait. They had to leave this planet. The Cthal had withdrawn after razing Earth, but they had left an occupation force behind. Their orbital stations watched the surface, ready to erase any remaining signs of life. But that was also their only chance. In an old hangar, buried within the mountains, the Exodus, a small warship, remained intact. Not a powerful battleship, not strong enough to take on an entire Cthal fleet, but enough to get them off this world. Every remaining soldier, engineer, and scientist worked tirelessly to repair it. They knew this was their last hope. If they failed, humanity would truly be extinct. Outside, Cthal patrols had begun to notice something. Disturbances in the signals, unexplained movements on the surface, traces of life. They knew something was wrong. They would come back, and humanity had to be ready. The day of departure arrived. The Exodus roared to life, its engines shaking the earth. The last warriors of humanity boarded. Carrying everything they had: weapons, data, the last remnants of human technology. The Cthal realized it too late. Orbital fortresses fired beams of energy, but the ship had already broken through the atmosphere, streaking into the void. Enemy warships gave chase. Alarms blared, but the Exodus was ready. They didn't have superior firepower, but they had will. When pushed to the edge, humanity did what no species could ever predict. They didn't accept death. They turned it into fuel. Somehow, the Exodus punched through the blockade. It vanished into the darkness, heading for the distant colonies. Humanity no longer had a home, but they were not extinct, and one day they would return to take back what was lost, and the Cthal would pay the price. Earth was lost, but the fire of war had never ceased to burn in humanity's veins. In the far-flung colonies, far from the ruins of their homeworld, There were those who had not fallen. They were not refugees, nor were they victims. They were warriors, the heirs of ancestors who had conquered worlds with steel, fire, and an unyielding will. The Cthal believed they had eradicated humanity, but they failed to understand one fundamental truth. Humanity was not a planet. Humanity was not a civilization. Humanity was a will, a flame eternal. And for every warrior who fell, 1,000 more would rise, carrying the fury of the fallen. Gungnir, for a colony buried deep in humanity's dark space, had yet to be discovered by the Cthal. Here, there were no civilians. No one remained on this world without reason. Those who lived here were the remnants of Earth's lost armies of warriors who refused to kneel. They were not just soldiers. Among them were the descendants of Viking warriors, those who believed that a glorious death in battle was the only true path to Valhalla. They wielded plasma axes, charging into the enemy with the ferocity of ancient war gods. There were samurais, to Japan's legendary warriors, who still followed centuries-old traditions, believing in honor in the perfect strike. Their blades were no longer forged of steel, but crafted from energy crystals, sharp enough to cleave through Cthal armor in a single slash. There were knights no longer clad in iron, but bound by an unbreakable code. They fought in heavy combat exosuits, their energy shields absorbing fire, unshakable amidst the storm of battle. There were the nomadic warriors, men and women without a home, without ties, but with one defining trait: an unrelenting thirst to survive and to conquer. They were the night hunters, the silent assassins, the masters of guerrilla warfare. And then, there were the strategists, those whose minds had built empires on Earth's battlefields. They carried the brilliance of Napoleon, the decisiveness of Alexander the Great, the ruthlessness of Genghis Khan. To them, war was not just power. It was an art. When reports of humanity's survival reached the Cthal fleets, they dismissed it as a joke. A handful of scattered survivors could never threaten an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds. That's what they thought, until the first Cthal fleet vanished. The battleship Shantar went silent while patrolling the fringes of human space. When a search team arrived, they found only wreckage-shredded metal drifting aimlessly in the void. No signs of a large fleet, no prolonged battle, just instant annihilation. Then the second ship disappeared. The third, the fourth. The surviving Cthal pilot spoke of shadows emerging from nowhere, warriors descending like vengeful gods. Beings who knew no fear, no retreat. They did not fight for defense. They did not fight for survival. They fought to kill. Supreme Commander Zarvun of the Cthal Empire knew something was wrong. Humanity was supposed to be extinct. But what he witnessed was unlike any war he had ever seen. This was not war. This was a reverse massacre. Reports from the outer battlefields described tactics the Cthal had never encountered before. Human fleets were smaller, weaker, but they never fought head-on. They struck from the void, from unseen angles, from places no one expected. They destroyed command ships first, throwing enemy formations into chaos. They cut supply lines, starving Cthal armies in the depths of space. They wielded fear as a weapon, something no species had ever dared to use. Against the Cthal, whenever the Cthal landed on a planet, they never knew what awaited them. Vikings could erupt from the dust, tearing through their defenses with plasma axes. Samurai could materialize in their midst, slicing through their armor in a single, perfect motion. Knights, clad in impenetrable battle suits, could stand unwavering in the storm of fire, halting entire divisions through sheer unbreakable will. The Cthal were beginning to understand. They were not fighting an army. They were fighting monsters of their own making. Humanity's survivors were not fighting to reclaim a home. They no longer had a home. All they had left was war. And Valhalla was not waiting for them. They would not die. They would fight forever. 3 decades had passed since Earth was wiped from the galactic map. The last remnants of humanity, as the Cthal believed, had vanished into the void of space. Now, they carried out their final campaign exterminating any remaining human colonies, nothing more than a routine hunt for ghosts. But what they didn't realize was that the ghosts were no longer running. The Cthal fleet gathered in orbit above Draken 7, a former human colony, once an industrial military hub. The planet was now a desolate wasteland, abandoned factories, cities buried in dust, not a single sign of life. Supreme Commander Zalzur sat in the command chamber of the battleship Bloodclaw, eyes locked onto the tactical display. The conquest of Earth had been a glorious victory, yet the war had dragged on in strange and unsettling ways. Patrols vanished without a trace. Outposts were obliterated overnight. Reports spoke of attackers appearing like nightmares, striking without warning, then fading into the void. One of his officers approached. "Sir, we received an unusual transmission from deep space." Zalzur frowned. "Unusual how?" The officer played the signal. A voice rang out, deep, cold, carrying an eerie weight as if it bore the burden of 1,000 years of warfare. "Cthal, you were mistaken. We are not dead. We are immortal souls, and you will pay the price." No explanation, no source, but its meaning was crystal clear. Before Zalzur could react, the tactical display flared to life. Officers shouted in alarm. Dozens of signals emerged from the void between the stars. Warships, vessels with old designs, their armor worn by time, yet still bearing the insignia of humanity. 30 years without a home, 30 years without a planet to shelter them, yet they were still here. No longer survivors, no longer refugees. They were warriors who had returned from the dead, and they weren't here to defend anything. They were here for vengeance. The human fleet opened fire with long-range bombardment. Crimson streaks of plasma carved through the darkness, slamming into the heart of the Cthal formation. Energy shields flickered, strained, and then collapsed under the sheer force. Zalzur gritted his teeth. Return fire. Now! The Cthal warships pivoted, retaliating with volleys of plasma bolts. But the human vessels did not charge recklessly. They moved like ghosts, faster, sharper, each maneuver slicing through enemy formations like a knife. And then they closed in for the kill. One human warship, the Valkyrie, cut through the enemy ranks like a sword descending in judgment. Its firepower tore a Cthal cruiser apart, engulfing it in a fiery explosion. Moments later, warriors in pressure suits launched from the hull, clinging onto Cthal ships, carving through their armor with blazing plasma blades. They did not fight like ordinary soldiers. They had no orders to retreat, no fear of death, only the will to fight until the last breath. Inside the Bloodclaw, alarms blared. Zalzur watched in horror as his ships were ripped apart, his warriors slaughtered with terrifying efficiency. This isn't possible. An officer, wide-eyed with terror, whispered, "They aren't human. They're monsters." Zalzur shook his head. No, these were not monsters. These were the same humans the Cthal had once fought. But now, they had been stripped of everything. No home, no belief in peace. Only war remained. A new voice crackled through the warship's comms. 30 years ago, we lost. Not because we were weak, but because we didn't understand what we truly were. Now we know, and we've come to reclaim what was taken. From the void, a massive warship emerged, Yggdrasil, the flagship of humanity's vengeance. A ship forged from the legacy of Vikings, samurai, knights, and the greatest warlords of Earth. The Cthal believed they had destroyed humanity, but humanity was never just flesh and blood. Humanity was legend, and legends never die. The battle raged for hours, but the Cthal never stood a chance. One by one, their warships fell, their invaders slaughtered without hesitation. Zalzur knew he had lost, and in his final moments, a horrifying realization struck him. He was not fighting mere survivors. He was fighting immortal souls, warriors who would fight forever, even if they had no home left to return to. They were the nightmares of the Cthal, and this nightmare was only beginning. The Cthal fleet was once the terror of the galaxy. They had conquered, annihilated, and assimilated hundreds of weaker species, turning every war into nothing more than a hunt. But this time, they were the hunted. Humanity's counterattack was no ordinary battle. There was no probing, no slow war of attrition. It was a thunderous strike and avalanche of destruction that swept away everything in its path. The Yggdrasil, humanity's flagship, led the charge, diving straight into the heart of the Cthal fleet. Its massive plasma cannons roared, tearing enemy warships apart like an axe splitting through rotting wood. Flanking it were Viking warships, rugged, brutal, engineered for one purpose alone: slaughter. Moving alongside them were the samurai ships, silent in the void. As the battlefield descended into chaos, they emerged like blades in the dark, slicing through Cthal defenses with surgical precision, striking at their weakest points. On the battlefield, humanity's warriors were unlike anything the Cthal had ever faced. They did not retreat. They did not falter. They did not even consider surrender. As the Bloodclaw, a Cthal battleship, exploded into a fireball, humanity's pressure-armored warriors leapt from their own ships, launching themselves into the void. They clung to the exteriors of Cthal warships like demons of Valhalla, unfazed by the absence of gravity, the lack of oxygen. Nothing mattered but war. With blazing plasma swords, they cut their way inside enemy ships, slaughtering anything in their path. The Viking warriors fought with primal fury, their war cries echoing through the calms, while the samurai moved like wraiths, killing with deadly precision. From the command deck of the Skaldar, the Cthal fleet's last remaining command ship, Supreme Commander Zalzur watched the slaughter unfold with wide, disbelieving eyes. "Status report," he roared. A trembling Cthal officer stammered. "Our fleet has lost 40%. No, 50% of our forces in just 2 hours." Zalzur refused to believe it. This was impossible. The Cthal had won countless wars. They had eradicated Earth. They had wiped humanity from the galaxy. But he had been wrong. These were not ordinary humans. They were legends reborn, spirits that could not be destroyed. And for the first time in their history, the Cthal knew fear. The battle was not just a massacre, it was a masterpiece of war. The ancient strategies of Napoleon, Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, Hannibal revived and perfected in the three-dimensional battlefield of space. The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves, each warship a predator, circling, closing in, striking with lethal precision. Viking ships shattered Cthal formations with relentless frontal assaults, forcing them into kill zones. The samurai ships, like specters, struck from the shadows, disrupting enemy lines with pinpoint strikes. The Knights of Humanity, aboard fortress-like warships reinforced with advanced energy shields, acted as indomitable walls of steel, smashing apart Cthal counterattacks with impunity. One by one, Cthal's ships were obliterated. Their armies were ripped apart. They were not facing an enemy that could be defeated. They were facing an enemy that would never stop. As night fell over the battlefield, the remaining Cthal warships tried to flee, but there was no escape. Any vessel that powered up its FTL drive was hunted down and destroyed before it could break away. Zalzor understood now this was no longer a battle. This was an execution, and humanity was the executioner. Before his flagship, the Skaldar, was torn apart by a volley of plasma fire, he heard a voice like steel, carrying the echoes of 1,000 years of war. We cannot be killed. We cannot be broken, because war is our nature, and you are nothing more than another chapter in humanity's legend. Then everything was consumed by fire. Humanity had not merely returned. They had become the undefeated. The planet Rithkal, one of the Cthal's greatest military strongholds, was consumed by fire. Human warships hovered in orbit, raining down plasma storms that reduced fortresses, cities, and roads to ash. The screams of the Cthal echoed in the chaos they had once inflicted on others, but had never endured themselves. The Cthal generals scrambled to rally their forces to mount a defense. But how do you fight an enemy that does not accept surrender? Human troops descended onto the surface clad in heavy combat armor, marching through the flames like gods of war stepping out of legend. They did not come to occupy. They came to destroy. There were no prisoner camps, no demilitarized zones, no rules of war that had ever existed. With every fallen Cthal city, humanity's symbols appeared. Eagles with outstretched wings, Viking warrior sigils, samurai swords carved onto bloodstained armor. One Cthal survivor, trembling, asked a human soldier, "Why won't you stop? We can surrender. We can submit." The soldier, his face hidden behind the dark visor of his helmet, responded with only one sentence. "We do not make peace with monsters." Then he pulled the trigger. One by one, Cthal planets fell. Each time a star system was conquered, it faced only two fates: total annihilation, or transformation into an endless battlefield grounds for humanity's warriors to train, to fuel their unrelenting wrath. Desperate Cthal commanders sent thousands of peace offerings into the void, searching for a way to end this nightmare. No one answered. Humanity did not seek peace. They did not fight for territory. They did not fight to conquer. They fought for vengeance. And their vengeance had no end. Human soldiers were unlike any army in the history of the universe. They did not tire. They did not waver. If one fell, 10 more took their place. When a Cthal warlord attempted to negotiate a ceasefire, he received a single response from the human fleet. Earth once begged for mercy. How did you answer? He had no reply. And then his world burned. It was not that they could not die. It was that until the mission was complete, they would not stop. A human warrior could be wounded, could be killed, but not one of them would allow themselves to fall before the last enemy was erased. The Cthal had once believed themselves to be the masters of the galaxy, but as the long nights passed, as generation after generation of Cthal were born into fear, they came to realize a truth. They were no longer the hunters. They were the prey, and the predators would never stop hunting. History had repeated itself in a way the universe had never foreseen. Humanity had been destroyed only to rise stronger. They no longer needed a homeworld. They no longer needed a civilization to protect. They only needed war. And with each battle, They moved closer to Legendo, becoming the greatest warriors history had ever known, a legend no species in the universe would dare to forget. Valhalla never welcomed them because they never stopped fighting, and perhaps they never would.